Welcome, everybody. I'm Darin Francis, host of Signals in Higher Education, and I'm coming to you from Harbinger Lane. We're doing a podcast today that's exploring experiential learning, and I've got with me Jeffrey Moss, the CEO and founder of Parker Dewey, where they're reimagining the campus recruiting process through micro-internships. Welcome, Jeffrey, to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Darin. Excited to be here, especially given your deep expertise in the space.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, listen, I want to have a conversation. We'll go a little linear and start back in the beginning for you. But I'm real curious. Do you recall when it was that you decided to start Parker Dewey? Do you have a sense? Do you still today of what that itch or pain was that you were trying to solve?
I know exactly what it was, that moment of insanity, if you will. So I was a growth equity investor with a focus on education and technology for most of my career. And back in 2015, I really saw that the college to career process was broken. And again, college broadly defined to include 2-year, 4-year, masters, workforce programs, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we were investing in colleges and programs that worked with colleges, and I'd gotten to know so many of these students, and they were smart and hardworking and had grit, but they were talking about how difficult it was to really land that first job because they didn't have the quote unquote right academic pedigree, the right major, GPA, family connections, and they were incredible. I went back to the office and really was looking at some of the summer interns we had this year, and we did all of the right steps in the process. We put them through behavioral interviews. We hired from the quote unquote best schools, and we were bringing people in where really in the first week, you realize that they may not be the right fit. They don't have the attention to detail or problem solving, or they think sort of venture capital is like Shark Tank, where you're just going to sort of listen to pitches, or they think it's all numbers and they don't realize there's an interpersonal.
Right.
So sometimes we realized it was the wrong fit. Sometimes they did. And sort of while all of this was going on, we were seeing this emergence of the gig economy. And I'm not talking DoorDash or Uber, thinking about Upwork and Fiverr and organizations for the first time willing to let individuals outside of the four walls work on projects. And
Right.
sort of this light bulb went off. Was college to career fundamentally broken? Were we essentially having a process that was high stakes for both employers and students, where we're asking them to quote unquote get engaged through a summer internship or married through a full time role? Can we use this acceptance of the gig economy to allow the students and the employers to essentially go on job dates? So I tried to find companies doing it. No one was. So spent a bunch of time really researching the space and ultimately decided to launch Parker Dewey.
I love the job dates thing.
It was less creepy when a college student used the metaphor versus a 50-year-old married guy, but I can't come up with a better one.
Yeah. Well, no, but I mean, there is you describe it well. We're at this stage right at the tail end of your education where you've got to sink or swim. You've got to jump into that full-time job or into a full internship without having done anything. And
one other thing on that, what's really interesting is that pain is being felt by both sides. 47% of recent college grads are under or unemployed. At the same time, companies are finding increasing cost per hire. They're finding that about 50% of recent college grads, when they're hired for that first role, wind up leaving within the first year. They're finding a process that's becoming more and more frustrating. So both sides are feeling the pain. Our trick is, how do you create something that addresses that pain in a way that both parties win?
So you've got a pretty diverse marketplace on the employer side. You've got a lot of different needs on their side that you've got to contend with. And then you've got this vision for, I don't know if you're thinking about it as a micro internship then, but a more compressed experience. How did you vet that and sort of find product market fit on the employer side? Because there had to have been just a whole lot of different needs. How did you then sort of, did you sort of, and I have like a recipe for the right type of employer project, or was it just sort of spaghetti against the wall kind of a thing?
No, I love the question. I'm not sure there was a formal recipe, but there was certainly a lot of taste testing, to keep the metaphor. So the first thing I did was talk to a ton of employers, different industries, different size companies, different departments, and really tried to understand the pains that they were feeling. And brought up this sort of concept of, well, what if you could give a college student, a recent grad, sort of a bite-sized project? And the first question that came up was, well, it sounds like a heavy lift, and are we going to have to share info and onboarding? And it was something I felt very acutely, especially having come from financial services where everything is just highly sensitive. So
Right.
what we started to do was understand, well, there's plenty of bite-sized projects, things a college student could do in 5, 10, 20 hours that don't require you to share not only any sensitive info, but any info at all.
Yeah.
Projects like industry research or content creation or data analysis, again, using public info. The other
Right.
thing we tried to do is, again, to my earlier point, tried to figure out if there was a certain industry or certain department or certain profile of the ideal customer. And what was actually really challenging is there wasn't. It would have been much easier if we said, ooh, this only works in sales or only works with manufacturing companies or tech companies. What we found is every organization was having this pain. Now, granted, it's very different. So, for a company that might be a Fortune 500 manufacturing firm, their challenge was college students may not have heard of us. We don't have the brand recognition of a Nike or a Google or an Apple. How do we drive interest? Or maybe we're getting a lot of interest in mechanical engineering roles, but not as many in strategy. For
Right.
smaller companies, it was how do we compete? We're not as many campuses as in Accenture or as a KPMG or one of the accounting firms. How do we compete with them?
Right.
And we also saw it from the other end, that these companies that did have very well-known brands that were getting a ton of applications, their challenge was how do we effectively filter? How do we determine, with resumes all looking great, how do we determine who are the ones we want to spend time with? Who are the ones that have not just the technical skills for the role, whether it's using Excel or Power BI or coding in Python, but also those other core skills, problem solving, communication, attention to detail, coachability. And part of what we were doing was understanding those different points of pain and trying to think through how we, through these micro internships, could help solve.
So, um, in this matchmaking process, and I appreciate the dynamic of sort of at least a two-sided market. I might argue you have three sides to this market.
I would agree with you, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but right now I'm thinking about the employer and the student initially. Um, uh, how do you get that employer comfortable with what a student profile is? How much information can a does a student provide? Uh, and how did you kind of get to that right balance? Because I could imagine if you require too much of the student profile up front, that actually then creates some friction in the process of onboarding more students. And if you don't provide enough, you have trouble on the employer side. So how did you arrive at, or what did you arrive at in terms of the sweet spot for that kind of data for an employer to see?
Yeah, I think there's two different steps in it. So first, when an employer posts a micro internship, and by the way, I want to be clear, I use the term employer. One of the things we did when we created Parker Dewey was we're actually the employer of record of the student for the duration of the project. This was
Okay.
very important because it removes the HR legal administrative burden for the employer, but also for the school while still protecting the student. We could talk more about that, but I'm always careful when I use that term employer, to be clear.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're truly almost like an outsourcing service then, and you're taking on all of that liability.
Exactly. But unlike the outsourcing services or staffing firms, there's no like temp to perm or conversion fee or contingent. Like we've
Ah,
the internal term we use is Jeff proof. Everything about the platform needed to be easy enough that Jeff would have actually used it before he started the company. If he had to go get sort of legal buy-in or how to share sensitive data or how to pay a conversion or temp to perm, like Jeff wouldn't use it. We had
yeah,
to make this really simple. Um, so anyway, to your question, there's actually two different steps where an employer is getting insights on the candidate. First, when the student or when the employer posts the micro internship, the student has to apply. The student proactively raises his or her hand and says, "I want to do this." And that's important because unlike the normal job hunt process, which is often driven by either compliance, because the school forces them to sort of sign up or for whatever platform or apply to some number of jobs, or convenience where they're just single clicking everything, we have a process where, again, students have to raise their hand to apply and answer one, two, three very short answer questions.
okay,
Again, and that's shockingly part of the secret sauce, even though it's not a secret.
right,
Asking a student a simple question like, why should we pick you for this? It's
yeah,
incredible some of the answers you see.
right,
Or how would you approach this project? Or why does this industry interest you? They're designed so it takes a student a couple of minutes, but it's also incredibly valuable for the employer when they're deciding which students they want to offer micro internships to. And in fact, employers have said those short answer questions are much more valuable than the resume or the GPA. That's what they're spending time on. Jeff may have a 3.9 GPA from a fancy school, but when he answers that question, is it riddled with typos? Does he
right,
write the wrong company's name? Are there grammatical errors? Is it just, I have some free time? Let's not select that student.
yeah,
Then on the project itself, again, they're designed to be short enough that they are low stakes, low risk, easy for the employer to offer and quickly review, but still give them enough insights. So,
yeah,
for instance, we want someone to create an article on XYZ topic.
right,
Awesome. I can have two, three, four students do that project, look at the deliverable in about 10 seconds, say, Darin was awesome. He gets what we do and understands. Jeff, not so much. Let's spend time on Darin.
yeah,
But I want to hit one other thing because you brought up that third stakeholder, which
yeah,
is the college or university. And that's part of the reason our logo is sort of that Venn diagram with three circles.
yeah.
Behind the scenes, colleges and universities can see all of this data. So
I was
when
gonna say your data has got to be really important, like really valuable to the institution. Now that you're describing it to me,
yeah, when you talk about experiential learning, it's vital. So now when Jeff, the student, walks into the career center and says, I'm not getting picked for any jobs. Yeah, the career services has always helped with resumes and interview skills and everything else. Now they're able to look at things like the short answer questions and say, Jeff, you're not putting your best foot forward. It's almost like being a fly on the wall in an interview, and they can provide more individualized coaching, but they can also understand programmatically. So there was a liberal arts program we were working with that the students had done exceptionally well in highly technical roles. They hadn't known that. It was
right?
really useful because then they were able to think about their messaging out to employers the same way they could see maybe our communication performance of students is below par. Let's think about how that's going to influence sort of our programming in the classroom or through career services that we need to provide more coaching to our students overall around communication.
Yeah, I mean now the institution has its own reputation in the mix here, and they're thinking about taking care of that individual student and helping them through improving their performance, but also by doing that, they're improving their standing in the employer community. They're also learning a lot about, to your point, oh, we didn't realize as a liberal arts school that we could have been really targeting this type of
Yeah.
employer. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And
Um,
to be very direct on that point, one of the things that's been really interesting to me, and we have now have 10 years of data, north of 97% of the students who complete these micro internships actually exceed the expectations of companies. which is, again, really, really useful to see for those schools. In addition, the other thing we're seeing with the schools as far as being responsive to the employers is they're now promoting micro internships to specific employers as a way to reinforce what they're doing on campus.
Yeah.
So thank you, Darin, for coming to our career fair this year. Did you know you can offer the students who came by your table micro internships as a way to keep them engaged and get insights on skills? Or, oh, XYZ company, you're telling us you want to see more accounting students and they're not applying. You can use micro internships as sort of a carrot to drive interest, because this is how 95% of college students want to be recruited. And this is really, really interesting because the schools are using it to better support not just the students, but also those employer partners.
So do you find that the students that come looking for a micro internship are at the tail end of their education? Do you find that they are starting to come in earlier and earlier? Like what's the mix of what you're seeing kind of in the aggregate?
Yeah, this was pretty interesting for me. I thought it was going to be primarily juniors when I started the company. What we found is it literally ranges from first year students to individuals in master's programs or even recent college grads, but they come for different reasons. Again,
Yeah.
the first or second year student, again, north of 70% say that they want to begin career exploration before junior year, but most companies are focused on internships only when you're a rising senior. So these freshmen and sophomores are coming to do that exploration. Do I want to go into accounting or marketing or finance, or checking those preconceived notions? When you're a junior, it might be I'm trying to get my foot in the door at a certain company or industry, or I'm still exploring before my summer internship. But we also see seniors, where a senior took a summer internship with a company, may have gotten an offer, but they're not sure it's the right one. They worked for a big CPG company, but they're kind of curious about a startup. But let me go try a micro internship, and they could realize the grass ain't greener. The
Right.
CPG company is a better fit or might not be. So again, we see all of these different use cases. It's the same thing with the employers. We'll see employers offering them very intentionally the first or second year students as a way to get early access. We see accounting and healthcare firms offering them to first and second year students to drive more interest in the field, especially with a shortage in allied health and accounting. But then we'll see it for juniors and seniors, either as a feeder into internship or full-time hiring, or for those last-minute requests. I mean, that's been really, really big the past couple of years, as companies don't know how many summer interns or full-time slots they're going to have for a given year. And they don't find out until April or May, and they have that OSM, that oh shoot moment, if you will, of we just got this request for these additional slots. How do I fill them? And they're coming to us.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I'm just taking I'm keeping my higher ed hat on for a second, thinking about what you're describing. And, when we talk about work-based learning, project-based learning, and micro internships, what we're immediately thinking about the end of the line in terms of, employment, right? But then I know from a lot of other research that we've done over time in the industry is that really um, there's a you can take that employment level data and also the experiential data that you're seeing and see, oh, students that go through this kind of program persist. They're retained at a higher rate in the program, right? So now you've got that economic indicator. That's a really powerful indicator for the institution. But you can even go back further and say, wait a minute, that one of the other problems that you have from a recruiting students to the institution sometimes is you're recruiting the wrong student, or you're not preparing that student for what they're going to experience. And so you can you can actually use the data from the internship model or the micro internship model that you're talking about to actually inform and
Hmm.
support who you're targeting as a student, but also you can inform what types of support system needs to be in place in order for those students to persist. So it's a to me there's an element of from an institutional perspective of actually understanding better which students are going to persist and then therefore which ones to recruit. And of course you want to recruit them all in most instances, but there's still there's a through line. I'm wondering if institutions talk to you at all about that sort of full life cycle, or do
It's
they
interesting.
stealth?
No, it's interesting. Rarely am I at least a bit of a loss for words. We have actually never thought about or talked about pre-admission use cases. It has not come up. I'm not suggesting it's not the right or wrong way. I really need to just think about that more. However, the other areas that you mentioned 100%, we are seeing institutions very proactively talk about micro-internships at admitted students' days or other recruiting events, especially when parents are there. How the
Yeah,
schools are
yeah,
actually using this as a tool to support this, and parents love it. Bucknell University, great example of this. In fact, they just received a very large grant from a donor tied to this to continue to scale the program. We're seeing it tied to persistence. In fact, I talked to a student who recently graduated. She's a first gen student, and we were just catching up. And I literally was crying when she was talking to me. She said she almost dropped out of school the first year because she wasn't seeing the connect. Like it felt disconnected, and she was able to work on some micro internship. Like it was just, I'm literally have chills recounting this story.
Mhm.
But you also brought up something else, which is work integrated learning. I mean, you'll appreciate this, and I'm sure most of the educators sort of here will. Parker Dewey is named after Francis Parker and John Dewey. We are believers in experiential learning. That is the core of what we do. But we
Yeah,
rarely talk about it, especially to employers or students, because candidly, they don't care. That's why I think so many experiential learning or work integrated learning programs haven't scaled the way they want, because it's really, really heavy lift for employers to provide. It's incredibly valuable. I am a huge fan of co-ops. I'm a huge fan of capstones and in-class projects and all of these other things, but they're tough to scale. They're tough to scale because they require a significant commitment from the employer, and the business value is sometimes questionable.
right,
So if I'm managing a team in a capstone and I have 5 different students and I'm committing a semester or even several weeks to it, how do I know, did Darin do a great job or was it Jeff? It's not really tied into the recruiting pain that the employers are facing. What we've tried to do with micro internships is almost backdoor into work integrated learning. Create something that solves an immediate employer need. I need a way to better engage, assess, and ultimately hire college students for summer internships and full time roles. Micro internships do it, but also backdoor into the institution, because you don't have to take away the academic freedom of faculty members or force it upon departments. Students are applying what they're learning in the classroom through these real experiences on their own. And
right.
one of the things that's been interesting, we're seeing students going to faculty office hours and saying, Professor Francis, I'm doing a market size analysis. I know you talked about it in the class. Can I pick your brain a little bit? It's really, really cool to see.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, uh, the the feedback loop to the institution is so valuable, and it what we're seeing.
Well, can I hit one thing on this feedback
Yeah,
loop?
yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
to interrupt. Again, I'm from Jersey. Um, it's part of the reason it's valuable is not just the level of depth, but
mhm,
it's the timeliness. So much of the feedback schools get is from things like first destination surveys, which happen after a student graduates. Or they're getting early indicators when the student's enrolled, tied to, again, did they show up to class? How did they do? What are their grades? What we're doing is giving them valuable, actionable, timely data. Real time. I'll know as a freshman or sophomore if Darin's working on a micro internship, if he needs more coaching in communication. I can see what projects he's applying to. He's an accounting student, but he's applying to a whole bunch of projects tied to marketing. I can provide better academic support and guidance to him. Again, these are real valuable insights that aren't the, oh crap, Darin just graduated and doesn't have a job. He's gonna pull down the numbers.
So I'm just going to keep at this from the. I didn't think we would be in this part of the conversation because it wasn't thinking this way. But now I have my student success hat on. Okay, I'm going to be the VP of student success at whatever university or college, and what I know is that hey, this in the first year experience, this gateway course is a killer, right? This one gateway course, if you're in STEM, is like the thing that kind of weeds a lot of students out.
Yep.
So why don't I work with Parker Dewey to actually figure out a set of offerings that we push out to students proactively, upon acceptance or sometime prior to that gateway course, right? And basically give them some experience going in and on the other side and or on the other side. But the point being that, like, what you're saying is that the students get a level, they're learning on the experiential learning side that is actually in some ways more powerful and may actually prep them to get through those tougher points in their early academic career.
Yeah, I mean, on the courses that are designed specifically to weed out students, I'm not sure it's a perfect use case. Again, this is where every school is a little different and every program is a little different. I know Calc 2, like when I went, like was designed for that. Yeah. Where we are seeing it, and this may tie to what you're saying, is one of the things I've always thought about micro-internships is they are a catalyst for the student. They are a catalyst. They are a reason for the student to go work on their resume when they're a freshman, because it's not about this amorphous, I'm going to apply to an internship when I'm a junior, maybe a sophomore. It's a catalyst for them to engage an alum. So it's not, I'm calling Darin because I'm required to for a school, and so I'm going to say, what's the typical day, or why were you, whatever. Like, they're kind of BS conversations. What we found is when students are working on micro internships, they are a catalyst for the student to leverage the incredible resources the school provides, whether they're a freshman or a senior, anything in between. If I know as a freshman or sophomore that I can go work on a real paid professional project for a company, I'm going to go update my resume. I'm going to go to the Career Center and get advice. If I know I'm working on this project, I'm going to reach out to Darin and pick his brain. I'm going to go use the online learning content my school has provided, or go engage with a faculty member. Again, it's a catalyst to drive the right behaviors of the student. Again, it goes back to, are the schools driving those behaviors because of compliance, because we're forcing students to create accounts on whatever, create a LinkedIn profile or update the resume, or can you use more carrot than stick? Can these micro internships be the carrot? And again, the reason they scale is not only do they benefit the students, but they're positioned to employers as, hey, here's a great way to get to know our freshmen and sophomores and get an early look at them, or a way to build your brand, or like, and again, it's this great win-win. And as you know from your experience in education, there's very few places where the interests of all the stakeholders are aligned. Normally, it's a zero-sum game between the school and the student and the employer, or some mix thereof. This is the one spot in all of education where there's complete alignment. The schools want the kids to get jobs. The kids want jobs. Employers want to hire them. Right. All we're doing is lubricating that process.
Yep.
Sorry, I get worked up over this stuff.
No, it's good. It's good. I mean, I want to actually get a little more into, before we finish, I want to get a little more into the employer side, because I think I've got some questions there that I want to understand maybe a little bit better. But while we're on the higher ed or on the institutional side, it seems to me that you, by going in through career services and sort of having that as the space, this is then co-curricular. It's not a credit bearing thing. So it's just really, you set this up, and it's a available resource that students come to. Are you finding that institutions A, want to find ways to embed this into the curriculum? Or B, are you finding ways in which institutions are seeing success and then doing more to promote it just as is in order to sort of grow adoption for other strategic reasons? But what do you see happening at the institution level once you've been in place for a little while? What are they asking for?
It is all over the place. So we have students from over 5,000 post-secondary institutions on the platform. We have been an open platform from day one. We want this to be accessible to any learner, whether or not we're a formal partner with their post-secondary institution. We now have about 1,000 post-secondary programs that we are partners with, but
Okay.
we are open. We also, as an aside, do not allow colleges or universities to require it of their students. Again, it's sort of counterintuitive. We want students to raise their hand and say, this is something I want to do. The school can certainly nudge, encourage, etc., and we love when they do.
Right.
But we think it's vital that students are there because they want to be. Some of it goes back to the learning and the importance of agency. But if I know I'm taking a full-time role with XYZ company upon graduation, like, is it a good thing if I'm taking away an opportunity from a student who actually genuinely wants and values it? So there's a bunch of things and we can dive more into it.
Yeah.
As far as offering credit, that is 100% up to the school. We have some schools that are tying it to certain classes, again, not as a requirement. We have some schools that are offering credit, etc. We're happy to work with the schools and meet them where they are. What we are seeing is a lot of the schools are using it, again, as a complement to what they're doing, certainly within career services. Again, what a great way to bring new employers to campus. It's an easy way for them to dip their toe in the water, or to encourage more employers to come to the career fair, that they can now keep students warm, even sort of be on campus for info sessions or do sponsorships. One of the things that's also interesting is we're seeing it tie into other departments at schools, like alumni engagement or corporate giving.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because now I can go to Darin, who's an alum who might not yet be in a position to write a big check, but can he offer a micro internship to one of our students? Again, Darin, who may have graduated 2 or 3 years ago, or in the case of Bucknell and several other schools, they're showing how they are supporting experiential learning of the students and creating these pathways to careers, et cetera, et cetera. And we're seeing very large donors writing checks to fund these programs.
Got it. Wow, that's exciting. Tell me about the Parker Dewey platform itself. I mean, is it a kind of one-stop shop experience? Is it just the point where the matching takes place? Like, or do the students then do the work and sort of submit work basically through Parker Dewey? Like, how does the actual internship itself get facilitated?
Yeah, back to the earlier comment, everything about the platform is designed to be Jeff proof. So at the most simplistic level, it is a two-sided marketplace. Company posts the micro internship, they can post it open to all, so
Yeah.
anyone on the platform can see it, or they can limit to specific populations. So I'm an Indiana alum, I only want to post it for Indiana students as a way to give back, or I know I'm going to be going to these 10 career fairs. I want to post it just for those schools, or I'm really interested in students with ties to Baltimore, Maryland. I
Yeah.
want students who go to Towson or University of Maryland College Park, but I also want to find those students who may originally be from Pikesville or Baltimore or Towson who go to school in California. So again, it's up to those employers to decide which students see it. Students then have to opt in. They have to raise their hand and say, yes, I want to do this project and answer the short answer question. That sort of prevents that application avalanche that employers are seeing. It also protects the students. We're not selling access to data to the highest bidder, so students are getting spammed. We know they don't want that. So
Right.
there's a double opt in. Now, once Darin picks Jeff, the student, to work on the project, everything is done off the platform. Again, we want this to be easy. If Darin and his company use the Google Suite and want Jeff to submit work in Google Drive, great. If he's
Right.
an Excel guy and wants him to send it that way, great. We want this to be easy. We don't want it to be another system. And the reason we're able to do that is because there's no benefit of cheating, if you will. So again,
Yeah.
if you think about a lot of the gig economy platforms, like if I work with Darin on the project and I want to hire, I owe someone a whole bunch of money, they want to keep everything on that platform.
Yeah.
In our case, because we don't charge, like, great, work and engage however you want. And then Darin only comes back to the platform when the project's done, where he
Right.
marks it complete. He fills out an evaluation, which takes about a minute, because again, we want people to actually do it. Where Jeff is rated on things like communication and timeliness and attention to detail, again, those core skills that are most valuable but difficult to assess. And
Yeah.
Darin doesn't give Jeff 1 to 5 stars. We don't want the Uber issue. It's, did Jeff perform as expected for an intern or new hire? Above. Did he perform like a rock star? Or
Right.
did he not meet my expectations? We
Yeah.
found this leads to much more nuanced data, which is really valuable for Jeff, the student, but also for the school.
That's what I was going to ask was like, so I get it. So you wrap up in the Parker Dewey experience.
Where
You
the book ends.
Yes. That's a great way to look at it. You're the bookends, and then the student and the institution get the benefit of the skills level data and the other insights that are provided from the employer in brief. But that also is just extremely valuable and measurable. So many institutions are trying to, go back and look at ways to add skills to curriculum, right?
And
And
it's a windshield versus a rear view mirror,
yes,
using the bad metaphor.
yeah, no, it's a great metaphor. Um, wow.
Sorry, I
Well,
took us way off topic.
no, you didn't actually. I was way more interested in just making sure that we were covering these new insights that I'm getting out of this from a higher ed perspective, and I didn't expect it. So it was a very pleasant surprise. I guess honestly, Jeffrey, what didn't I ask you? What what should I have asked you so far today?
Yeah, I don't like, again, the thing we hear all the time, which is kind of interesting, is first of all, like, gosh, I wish I had this when I was a student, or my kids in school, I hope they're using it. Or this seems obvious. Why isn't everyone doing it? And the
Yeah,
honest answer is I just don't know. It is obvious. Again, it's the win-win for all three stakeholders. I think a big part of the challenge is sort of these preconceived notions. This belief that it's going to be a heavy lift, this belief that we already have an internship program, we're good. I think once the employers recognize that, gosh, this is a complement to our campus recruiting, it lowers our cost 40 to 80%. It
mm-hmm.
improves conversion, improves retention, improves sort of diversity and other metrics. Then they get it. Then they get it. And in the same way, the colleges love it because sort of it's an easy to integrate or easy to introduce work integrated learning or experiential learning opportunity. But it also complements so much of what they're also doing around career services, whether it's how do we get more companies to recruit on campus or come to career fairs or hire our students. That's the beauty of it. It kind of fits in so many different places for those stakeholders.
You clearly have momentum on all three sides of the three-sided marketplace, and that to me seems, if I were to start a business today, it seems like a really unlikely outcome. But it's really working. And I honestly see this as, what I keep hearing is that career services is actually becoming more and more important and strategic at the institution. Whereas in the past they'd been sort of this off to the side thing that you occasionally use, and now it's becoming more mission critical. As that happens, I think the need for Parker Dewey is going to only increase there, and that's going to create another waterfall.
I'm going to yes and you because I agree. But one of my concerns is I think sometimes as it becomes more important, sometimes there's a focus on the wrong metrics, a focus on activity versus outcome, a focus on how many of our students attended the career fair, and you're using, back to the metaphor before, more stick, less carrot to drive it because they're being measured on how many students come to the career fair. We would
Right.
suggest let's focus on, if they're not coming, why, and how can we make it more enticing for the students to attend versus requiring it. So
Yeah.
that's been really, really interesting. The other thing that's interesting is, again, especially right now, where both post-secondary education and early career programs within companies are under attack. I mean, we've all seen the articles about AI ending early career jobs, and there's like, I just fundamentally disagree. What we are seeing is companies continuing to see even more importance on those core skills or durable skills or whatever we want to call them.
Yeah.
The problem solving, the ability to learn, the adaptability, and the hiring processes that were in place by companies don't effectively assess them, and the educational system doesn't effectively communicate to the students why those skills are important and how to communicate them. The liberal arts programs do a great job teaching these skills as an example, but the student doesn't necessarily see the crosswalk between the class that doesn't sound like a job title and the professional role. This is really where I think we're playing an integral role. We're helping the student understand that what I learned in philosophy about how to research and craft an argument can be vital in strategy or marketing or finance, at the same time helping those companies that are saying we need to see students with better communication skills, especially in this world of AI. Well, here's a way to evaluate the communication skills of a student, whether they're taking a tech class or whether they're a philosophy major.
Yeah. I just realized I didn't hit on this earlier on, and I meant to. Um, the U.S. higher ed market, if you include in it community colleges, is extremely diverse. You've already mentioned the liberal arts side of institutions. You've hinted at the fact that you do work in the community college space first, or also, but like, can you talk about like, is there an emerging part of the market that has surprised you, or a part of the market that's really starting to wake up and come to the table, or have all these sort of in boats rising on the ocean at the same time?
I think everyone is coming up, but it's very institution dependent. So again, I mentioned Bucknell before. I'm not talking out of school. They've been very public about this. They have been a true leader in this. They recognize that there's a huge opportunity. One of the areas where they're focusing is on their sophomores. How can we get our sophomores more career exposure as they're exploring career paths? They have been on the forefront, and they're a great school. There's other schools that have been a little bit slower to it. And it's not a dig at them. We still welcome their students arms wide open, but sometimes they have other priorities, or their teams are different or focused on other things. And that's okay. We're here if and when they need us. And the nice thing is there's no cost to the schools. We're not going and selling them a 5 or 6 figure, like, massive thing. This plugs right in. And again, back to the making it easy. We're not integrating with their IT systems. We're not asking them to share any student data. It doesn't touch any of the stuff that usually drags on when schools are trying to work with a new organization. Again, we've made this really easy for them. But I wish there was a signal. I wish I could say every school that has placement rate below X is a perfect partner for us and we should be talking to them, because it's completely inconsistent and depends on, again, who's leading the career center, who's leading the school, or what their strategic priorities are, or otherwise.
Right. It feels like, you know, a micro internship is just the right level of um, work that gets to a student no matter where they are. It feels like table stakes for a school is to have Parker Dewey set up. If they're not, I mean, well,
I love that quote.
your
Parker
student.
Dewey is it's the I think your point is really good. It's the Pareto principle. It's that 80-20. That
Yeah.
for 20% of the lift of a summer internship or everything, like, I can get 80% of the data on if this is someone that we want to bring in for the summer internship or bring in for the full-time role. Same thing with the student. Again, we don't want to replace the 10 or 12-week summer internship or the semester long. That is incredibly valuable. But we
Yeah.
think the opportunity to go on these job dates beforehand is a really good way for both the students and the employers to determine. One of the other things we do, and it's on our website, is we actually survey the students using the NACE core competencies when they're done with the micro internship on how much they feel like it helped them develop their skills. So they're not rating their skills. They're just talking about, did working on this 5, 10, 20-hour project help me improve my communication or teamwork or leadership or whatever? The results are astounding. It shows it has an impact. But one of the things that was most interesting to me is even in situations where students said, yeah, it didn't really help me build my skills, we added a choice about, I didn't build my skills, but I increased my confidence, which is really, really important, especially as you think about students underrepresented in the workforce, the first gen, the Pell eligible, the adult learner.
Yep.
This is valuable.
Extremely valuable. Yeah, I think I learned a lot today, Jeffrey. I really appreciate you giving me a lesson and helping me think through where Parker Dewey fits into this. And I really do see it as a mission critical element to institutional strategy for employability, but for student success generally. And so I really appreciate you taking the time. This is really great.
I would tend to agree. And again, the reason it works and the reason it scales and the reason it can be successful for what you just described is it provides that immediate value to the employers on the real pain they're facing about how do we engage, assess, and hire for these early career roles and bring in the right people. And again, that's what's exciting to me. But thank you so much for the opportunity, again, especially given the deep expertise you have in the space.
Oh, I appreciate it. Pleasure's all mine. We'll talk again.